All right, good morning. It's 9 o'clock on January 20th. I'm Vern Tepe, Chair of the Public Service Committee, and I hereby call the meeting to order. First off, I want to really thank the indulgence and support and assistance of the committee in passing the redistricting. It was a challenge, but as we discussed in our last meeting, the work that was done by the staff has been exemplary. And it was their work and their effort that made it happen. And they have more work to do. So one of the things that's going to happen is that they're going to be reporting on that progress now every month so that we can see what's happening associated with that. So thank you very much. We have several minutes to be approved. May I have a motion to approve all of the minutes?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call.
See, you've got a conscience too.
It wasn't on the agenda, so I skipped it.
Yeah, it's number one. You just overlooked number one.
Roll call, please.
Brown,
Brown here.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
I think I'm all
Lewis,
set, actually.
Lewis
Let's
here.
finish it up.
When do you have to?
Hopefully
Pepperell?
tomorrow afternoon.
Surges, Copy,
Burgess is there.
Copy's here.
Opie's there, yes.
Tepe.
Deputy's here. Thank you.
I
Next,
can't
can I have
hear
a
it.
motion to approve the minutes of December 23rd, January 4th, January 7th, and January 11th.
Brown moves for unanimous consent of the approval of the minutes as identified.
Brown moves.
Surges second.
Burgess second. Roll call, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Shepro, Surges,
Surges, yes.
Copy, Tepe.
Deputy, yes.
Copy, yes.
Opie, yes. All right, public comments. We have one gentleman signed up, or we did have him signed up. Oh, there he goes. There. We're hiding behind the stand there. Good morning.
Morning. Bob McQuillan, Batavia, Illinois. I didn't follow the district.
Please say your name for the record.
I did. Bob McQuillan,
Thank you.
Batavia, Illinois.
Thank you.
I didn't follow the county district remapping at all in November. Actually, last night, I found out that I went from District 11 to District 2. I'm talking on topic, so I should have 5 minutes. I have followed the precinct realignment, though I wasn't able to attend meetings in person. Last night, I listened to the audio from the January 7th Public Service Committee meeting. I was surprised by what I heard. First, there was confusion over the state statute and what had to be done when. There was talk about a part 1 and a part 2. It was difficult to follow because the PowerPoint presentation was not posted online with the agenda. The state's attorney clearly stated that the precinct realignment had to be completed within 60 days of November 15th, 2021. She also stated that the requirement to get the 1,200 voters per precinct realignment was not due until the, quote, June meetings, unquote. Mr. Shepro and Mr. Copy and Mrs. Lewis all asked about the dates and were told they would have everything on Tuesday, January 11th. The 1,200 precinct limit did not have to be approved by January 15th. According to Ms. Moser, it didn't have to be done until June. The Public Services Committee specifically its chairman, created this precinct nightmare. It was not created by the state statute. Again, according to Miss Jamie Moser, all those employees who had worked so hard didn't have to. If Miss Moser knew you had until June, why didn't everyone else know? This committee chairman even said that he knew board members would not understand everything they would be approving on January 14th. Listen to it. It's on audio. The approval by the board on January 15th has created major problems for this primary election cycle. Petitions were supposed to go out on January 13th. In all probability, walking lists won't be available until early February. And I don't trust that statement. Petitions must be filed by March 14th. And also figuring out the number of signatures required in the candidate's handbook is like following a Ouija board. Candidates will have 60 days instead of 90 days to campaign. And they're actually campaigning in the winter cold months. But actually, this might be a good thing. You talked about voter education. Where is that plan and who's working on it? There was a self-made nightmare, and this should have never happened. And by the way, since there wasn't any discipline taken on the DeVry scandal, the county has opened itself up to lawsuits from other county employees who were not given the opportunity to get a free college education. I would like an explanation of why the precincts were cut down to the 1,200 voters in January and were pushed through when it didn't have to be done until June. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Finance Committee. Their reports in the file. They're not here. Recorder's Office, reports on the file. I know they're a little bit short-staffed today, so they're over there and I was here this morning. Our Treasurer's Department.
Good morning, Maria Herrera, Chief Deputy.
Morning.
Mr. Kilburn asked me to step in for him today. Our report is on file, and the only thing we wanted to announce is that our senior deferral program is going on right now. It's a program from the state where people who are 65 and older with an income of 55,000 or less could apply for that application for that assistance. Also, I wanted to introduce Cindy Christopher. She is our customer service manager. She just started this month.
Oh, welcome.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions? Thank you. Hearing none, let's go on to the Supervisor Assessments. Mark.
Good morning, everyone. My report is on pages 16 and 17 of your packet. As I've noted in the past, one of the dangers of getting these things in 10 days early is that you don't get the most up-to-date information in the report. So what I can do is report that to you orally. On January 14th, the Board of Review certified the 2021 assessment roll to the county clerk. And that was a good 2 weeks ahead of last year. So we're moving well. At that time, the county clerk can start working on tax extension and then can do a lot of data validation. Our statutory deadline for the Board of Review to adjourn is not until March 15th. But if we do at that point, we don't have time for data validation to get the tax bills out on time. And this allows a much easier transition for the clerk's office and then the treasurer's office as well. You see, for those of you on the phone, Maria is nodding. She agrees that it's easier to get that information in earlier. The assessment roll total certified by the Board of Review is $17.87 billion of equalized assessed valuation. That would be up from last year's $17.16 billion of EAV. Now, I would note that is not the taxable valuation because there's still a lot of things that have to come out of that. For instance, exemptions have to be removed. That will reduce that number by more than $1 billion. Also, some things are going to have to be added in, such as Carrier Railroad, which is assessed by the state, and then a couple things taken out again. Something called under-assessed parcels. What that means is a parcel that is assessed with less than $150 of equalized assessed value. In such instances, the clerk has the authority, and our clerk always does, not extend taxes against those properties. The reason for that is it actually costs more to send them a bill and process it than the money that is actually returned. Last year, we had 5,652 of those properties with an average assessed value of $33. So that brings everything up to date for where we are right now. We're finishing getting the last of our transfer declarations processed for 2021, so we can start the 2022 assessment year as soon as we roll, which will be sometime next month. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you. Any questions?
Brad
Mr.
Brown here. Mark, could you give me an example of what one of these properties is? It's got such a low assessed value. I'm assuming it's a very small parcel, obviously.
They can be very small parcel, but they can also be very big parcels with a different reason that's on them. For example, if you have a property that is common area of a homeowners association, by statute is assessed at $1. The reason for that is when you buy say a townhouse and you have a clubhouse with that, you're buying a part of that clubhouse, an undivided share of that, and that's an appurtenance that runs with the land. So if you then put a separate assessed value there, but you're assessing the townhouses at the sale price, which includes that undivided part of that, you'd be double taxing those properties. Another example would be there's a special break for developers that allows them to subdivide parcels and not have to pay taxes on it. And we have a few thousand of those throughout the county. So if somebody subdivides, say, farmland, they now have farm-sized lots. They're assessed under the farmland assessment law because it doesn't change just because of subdivision. And that then keeps that value down very low until the property sells or is improved. And we have a number of those lots. That's actually a state program that was introduced back in the early 80s by then State Representative Hastert. So with all that, we have those account for about 5,000 parcels, but the actual value lost by not being extended last year was only $189,000. That sounds like a lot, but when you look at the overall taxable or the overall assessed value of $17.87 billion, it's the veritable drop in the bucket. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Armstrong, just out of curiosity's sake, I've seen it before, but what was the total amount of property taxes collected for this last year and paid into King County?
I would have to refer that to the treasurer's office. My office handles the valuation side, whereas the treasurer's office handles the billing side. And if you're wondering why there was a difference, that split actually took place in 1967. Before that, my office was part of the treasurer's office. While I couldn't speak to it directly, there's an old saying that if you, before you ever want to remove a fence, you want to figure out why it got built in the first place. My guess is that having the valuation side and the billing side in the same office might have been too much of a temptation in some jurisdictions.
Sure. Thank
But I'll
you.
refer that to the question of the treasurer.
The full collection was $1.3 billion.
Thank you very much.
And actually, the details are in our report.
Yeah, I was looking under
It's very long.
assessors.
report, Very long. Okay, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Regional Office of Education, I believe they're online.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I
Morning.
want to make you aware that on March 4th, out at the Q Center, we will be having our annual Institute Day, which is the professional learning day for teachers and parapros and other school staff throughout the county. We are anticipating probably about 600 teachers to be out at the Q Center. Our focus this year is on social emotional learning, and I'd like to invite all of you to come out and join us. There is a schedule online. If you go to our website and then click Institute Day, you'll see the schedule. You're welcome to register. If you don't want to register and just want to stop in, you're welcome to do that as well.
Thank you. Any questions?
Bates,
All right.
please.
Ms. Bates,
Will you be offering a Zoom option for the teachers to attend remotely?
Not for the Q Center, we will not. Some of the other sessions that are being held in the buildings, there may be an option. But the State Board of Education has decreed that educators must be in person. So it's difficult to offer a Zoom option with that mandate.
thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
All right. Our county clerk, Mr. Pollack. Good morning.
Good morning. You have a copy of our report in the file. You now have basically the full reports of everything for 2021. So you can see how we've rebounded in terms of a lot of vitals, marriage licenses, passports, et cetera. Numbers have gone up. You can see that in the revenue. One quick note, Supervisor Armstrong mentioned that the tax process, our office gets all of those tax levies that are filed by the taxing bodies. So we're inputting those. And so as we get the book sent to us, then we can, start the process of our next section, our next part of it. One thing that'll change hopefully next year, we had worked on legislation and the General Assembly passed and the governor signed a bill that will allow taxing bodies to file their levies electronically starting next year. So hopefully that'll make the process go a little bit faster in terms of moving things along. You've heard a lot from our office in the last few weeks, so you have our report if you have any questions.
How about a brief update on the redistricting status?
I don't really have anything at this point.
Okay, do you know where the data conversion stands? Has that come in yet?
I don't know.
It'll be coming in this week.
Mr. Chairman, this is Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Feinstock.
Yeah, we're working through the data conversion still at this time. I know that staff has gone back and forth, I think, a couple of different times with the Director of Elections, Raymond Esquivel. So we're still working at that. I think that we're making progress. There's things that we have to test and validate, and I think that that's progressing. So I do not anticipate them being done tomorrow, but I think next week we'll have a data set available in elections for Raymond and the staff to begin looking at. That's what our goal is right now, is to have that in their office. And then, once we get them to do their initial review and looking at it and start looking at validation processes, we'll probably look at making another export and import based on what feedback we get. So this first week, we spent a lot of time just doing some minor cleanup and testing of different things before we get ready to do the first validation attempt.
Thank you, Roger. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Surges.
Mr. Surges.
I do want to, I've commented it a few times that I'd like to get together with Jack's office to discuss the mail-in voting. And while Jack has personally reached out, I did not want to jump. I mean, you know, his entire team has just been inundated trying to meet deadlines. And I just wanted to comment that Jack has reached out to me personally. We have not gotten together to begin this discussion. And I'm hoping that as this precinct stuff, as that dust kind of settles and somebody gives me the all clear, I'd like to circle back around on that. I just wanted that in the public record. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pollack, I just wanted to make a comment about potential walking lists for candidates coming up. I think Mr. McMillan, I hope I pronounced your name properly, had worried about walking lists being available for a while. I think one thing that we have to take into consideration as candidates, if we are going to run for office, is the fact that the majority of all of the different county board districts are going to be, the majority of them are going to be the same. There are certain common areas that haven't changed. And with respect to getting the signatures for a walking list, I think the Democrats have to get 18, Republicans have to get 25. So if you want to double or triple that just to be safe, you know, you're looking at somewhere between 50 and 75 signatures. And I think anyone that's going to run for office knows certain areas that did not change at all and be very easy to get those signatures. So even though the walking list is a consideration, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
That's true for certain offices, but the redistricting has created issues associated around the precincts, and that's what's creating more areas for the political parties to deal with.
Yeah, and
Mr. Chairman, Sturgis.
Mr. Sturgis.
So Bill, just to follow up on your comments a little bit, I know that, you know, we are planning some mailers and stuff like that. Not so much for election, because that's just a little ways off, but there were some areas that needed some information on activities that are beginning in their area. And I'm wondering, are those lists even available for us at this period of time, or do we just hit the brakes and say it's going to be another 30 days or 60 days? Well, I mean, give me a range, ballpark.
Roger, are you still online? Can you give an answer to that?
Sure. So right now, if you were to go into the elections office, you could still get a walk list based on the current precincts, which I know, you know, won't be in perfect alignment because we've split a number of them, and there's also a number of precincts that you know, were the boundaries were changed. So generally speaking, you know, you have some overlap and some things that aren't going to be within, you know, legislative or congressional districts because we had to realign them. Those were going to be, you know, changed regardless of what we did for county board. So you could get a voter file by address, right, for any voter that's registered to vote, and you have the district boundaries that are published in the maps. So you have addresses and you have the boundaries that are published in the map. Now, you know, if you were using a more sophisticated method of creating your own mailing, you would want to geocode your addresses so you send them out to only the districts that are relevant to you. And I think that that's the part that's missing, is the county clerk can actually give you a walk list based on the jurisdiction or election that you want, instead of kind of the broader brush of here's the registered voters by address, and on the other hand, here's the jurisdictional boundaries. The kind of the beauty of the voter registration system that we have is that we can filter down the walk list to just the jurisdiction that you want. Right now, that's not accurate, because even if we wanted to, without any split precincts or any other work, we still have to input all of the new legislative congressional boundaries to get you, even the county board districts were in process, you know, to get an accurate walk list of who is in that district.
So Raj, if I could be,
Yeah.
Vern, if I could ask just a follow-up there, and,
Yeah.
and this is going to get into the weeds, and I don't need to do it in the committee, but for instance, Mo Iqbal and I have a developer that wants to bring something into a specific area. Mo and I would like to reach out to residents in like a quarter-mile radius and say, we're going to have an open house to discuss this.
Sure.
Do you guys have enough time for us to come in and say, how do we get a list of those people and who do we go to? Do we go to Jack's office or Roger, do we come to you?
You probably would talk to if you're looking for voters. I'm not sure if you want voters or do you want general?
Probably residents. I mean, it's not a political thing. It's just
to
doing
me,
our job.
That's more parcel based. So you're looking for the, parcels within a certain area and the owners of those parcels, right? So the people that own and occupy.
Correct. So would that be you or Jack?
Probably would be something that the Supervisor of Assessments office and the GIS could work on with you. We could look at what parcels are within, let's say, 10 miles or 5 miles or, something like that. And GIS normally would do that part, but I believe even development might be able to help with giving you the list of people that are within an area.
Okay, so just to take it offline, I'm just looking for the point of contact out to take this out of committee and.
Yeah, contact me outside of here, and even in development, Tim might be able to help.
Okay, Vern, thank you for your patience.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Surges. Any other questions?
Copy, please.
Mr. Copey.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Surgis's questions and points were on point, and Mr. Fonstock's explanation culminates the concern that the speaker had at the very outset of the meeting. It's obvious we've gone backwards. For us to exercise this machination of creating our own walk list with pieces of information here and there, and anticipating that the lady at church is willing to go through that effort to walk her neighborhood is outside of the realm and on another planet in regards to the expectations of party workers and managers, and not to mention the voting public. My precinct had doubled. Easy to say, oh, just go get some signatures from somebody you know. That's easy enough and not a problem. But the reality is I need to walk the rest of the precinct. I need to know who the voters are. I need to know what their issues are. I need to know. And I need to know before March 15th or 14th, whatever the date is. Don't spring it on us at 1 week before the end of the term and say, oh, okay, yeah, well, we're covered. We got it covered. That's the next thing we're going to have to listen to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Copey. Anyone else? All right, I'd like to take a moment here. We've just received information that Sergeant Ken Thurman of the Aurora Police passed away last night due to complications of COVID. It's always a sad moment when you lose anyone, and when you lose someone that's on the front line of dealing with people, that makes it even harder. This has been a tough couple of years, and as I say, it's always difficult to recognize any loss. But could we have just a short moment of silence in honor of Sergeant Ken Thurman? Thank you. Moving on, can I have a motion to place reports on file?
Leonard moves.
Brown seconds.
Brown second. Roll call.
Brown,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Shepro, Surges,
Surges, yes.
Hopi,
Okay, yes.
Steffi, yes. And in honor of Mr. Kenyon, can someone place a motion to
Brown moves, we adjourn.
adjourn the meeting?
Leonard
Brown
seconds.
moves. Leonard seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.